Hey team, Macho Models. It is Tuesday, January 7th, and I'm coming to you with my first of what can potentially be many book reviews. So I've been picking up a bunch of stuff from Japan, of mecha designers that I really like. There's a trend of on Twitter or just in my feeds where someone will mention where something came from, and I'm infinitely curious about that person and where they came from. One of the through lines kind of throughout this book series that I'll do is that as an adult, I'm finding one of the kind of cool pieces about, getting deeper into this collecting hobby and building is finding out where stuff came from. And more often than not, there's a great through line. So for instance, you can just see on this cover that you have the swordfish from Cowboy Bebop and you have Zeroid MS. So I was pleasantly surprised to find out that that designer did these similar works, which explains probably why I'm so attracted to those same franchises. So throughout some of these book reviews, and I'm gonna put some other stuff into there, but in this designer series, I'm gonna highlight stuff that I'm really attracted to and stuff that I like, and I'm hoping in turn you'll dig it as well. So for the first one, this is for Kimitoshi Yamane, and then I have his wiki site pulled up here. I'm just gonna give this a really quick read. And something that really stood out to me was how many series this guy was involved in terms of mecha design. So from the top, was born in 1966, Japanese mecha designer, noted studio Art Mick, and then began with Bubblegum Crisis, which I love, 80 Police, which is awesome, Dead End City, I don't know if I've seen that, Gal Force, and Megazone 23. I know Megazone 23 is a huge fan thing, especially if you're into mecha and into motorcycles. After the studio was disbanded, he started his career as a freelancer and worked on numerous series as a mecha designer, including The Vision of Escaflowne, Cowboy Bebop, Mobile Suit Gundam, Zero-8 MS Team, Mobile Fighter G Gundam, and he worked for the first time with Shinichiro Watanabe on Cowboy Bebop. His work on non-robot productions such as Silent Service and Gatchaman's awesome, and numerous Art Mick works have also been lauded. Yamane has authored a book, Kimitoshi Yamane Mecha Zukan, so that's what we're looking at here. And there's just another quick rundown here, but I'll put a link to this in the description. And also, before I dive into the book, I want to give the person who told me about this a shout out, because I really think he's worth a follow. His name is Ali Barter, and he is a freelance journalist who works out of Tokyo for Forbes magazine. He's constantly publishing great pieces about anime and pop culture, and he's a huge mecha addict. He has an incredible figure collection. So needless to say, anytime he mentions a designer that I like or happen to catch something he writes, I jump on eBay and see if there's a book. And for now, I've got a couple in the backlog, and if I can get through these reviews and if they're really well, or I should say reasonably well received, I'll do some more. But give me feedback if you like this, and I'm certainly open to doing more of these. But with that, let's go ahead and take a dive into that. And sorry about the longer introduction. In the future, I'll keep it short and sweet and just jump into the mecha goodness. So this came from Japan. I got this on eBay. Actually, I'm sorry, this came from the States. I think this came from the bookseller in New York. That's kind of escaping my brain right now, but I got it for a reasonable price, maybe 40 bucks, and it got here in a couple days. Some of the other stuff I get from Japan is maybe 10 to 20% less, and it takes about a month to get here, but well worth looking up on eBay, and lots of good stuff on there. So out of the gates, we've got some Escaflowne stuff, which looks great. The swordfish looks phenomenal. I forgot Faye's and Jet's ship right here. But this is a great book. I think in total, it's about 200 pages. But you got a lot of really cool kind of side designs here. I'm sure I'm gonna skip and screw up a lot of stuff here, so you guys are just gonna have to stick with me. I'm not sure what series this is from. I was trying to look around if there's an English part of it. But this stuff is really inspiring to me. I like seeing this stuff and thinking about where I can do a scratch build or take an existing build and kind of morph it into something like this. And I won't page through it individually. At some point I'll start skipping. I wanna try to keep this under maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Beautiful mecha design. I mean, as if there's any 90s fans or late 80s fans here, you should instantly be attracted to something like this. We start getting into some of the Gundam stuff, some of the Seed stuff. It looks like he was involved in some of the capital ship designs. This is great. I love these smaller pieces, and you even got a little bit of modeling content here too. I of course, cannot read Japanese, so all I can assume is that this is somebody rendering out one of his designs. These little side panels too are really cool. I hope I get to one that I found a little bit later that really inspired me for a future build. And we start kind of getting into each of the chapters here. So it looks like it'll be Cowboy Bebop and Swordfish, and I love these mechanical designs. I absolutely love this, especially where you get this larger splash splash image, and then it kind of breaks out into each of the individual pieces, and it shows the how and why. Like for instance, I love that this shows, you know, I can't read this, but I know just from my background that this is an air brake, and it's so cool that the designer takes time to kind of explain this in a larger context, and it's that type of really deep world building that I'm so attracted to. I mean, just even here too, pointing out how this headlight is drawn and the gun ports and everything, it's super cool, and I love those details, and I try really hard to incorporate them into my build work as well. Same thing too, like looking at the monopods and the cockpits. Something interesting when I flipped through this earlier was realizing, and I never picked this up, but all the Cowboy Bebop kind of subships all have this single ball assembly. It's just the frame that goes around it. So I didn't even think about that or realize that for the world that they built. I love this picture too of like a proto Spike sitting next to, you know, where 50 cal is in this opening. I think they just released this really expensive toy that actually has this, and my guess is they probably pulled from some of these source materials. So this is cool too with the Bebop and the crew quarters and the monopod, as I mentioned a moment ago. So yeah, all the ships are based off of a monopod, and it was really cool to see Spike in here. I think I read something about this too somewhere else where, I mean, you can see that this is where the designer really sunk in. I mean, especially from the key and the cockpit controls. I mean, all this stuff, you know, if you at first glance might seem superfluous, but really to building effective world building and really drawing your viewers in and putting layers and layers on the story, this is where it's at. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. I mean, go back to the 70s with Star Wars, go back to the 50s and 60s with Flash Gordon, you know, great studio design, item design. It really adds depth to stories. This was cool. I always felt like the Hammerhead was not featured enough in the Cowboy Bebop series. And then some of the other spaceships that they had. And we have some vehicles. So I don't know if this is, yeah, I guess it's still associated with Cowboy Bebop. So this is pretty cool for world building. The items too, you know, like the, I always thought this was a Walther pistol, but I guess it's something that the designer came up with on their own. I love this little computer terminal right here. The exercising machine, which is so cool. I'm curious if I ever rewatch Cowboy Bebop, if I can pick up where this stuff was located. The cigarette lighter, I mean, I'm confident that that's Spike. This is awesome. Wild Horses, this is a great episode too, where I think this is the one where they went down to the planet to get Spike's, get the swordfish repaired, and the whole gag there was that they had a whole bunch of other pilots, and they ended up using a bunch of the space shuttle and old World War II aircraft for some kind of zany chase / heist scene. I love the multi-missile pods, these are great. This reminded me a lot of Crossbone Gundam when I was looking through it. It's cool to see the swordfish on the back of this trailer as well. Game in Comics, so still with Cowboy Bebop. I'm assuming this is some other enterprise. Showing some of the original sketches where everything kind of started from. These are really inspiring. It's interesting to see the red tail where it's different armament and what it evolved into. And same thing with the Bebop. It looked like the swordfish really didn't change too much from concept to execution. I thought this was cool down here too. You had kind of like a little Jedi core fighter thing. An Escaflowne. So, admittedly, and hopefully you don't unclick this, I have not seen much of Escaflowne. I think I've seen a couple episodes when I was younger, but these are really cool. These bio-organic designs are really neat. I liked flipping through this previously, how this cockpit was set up, or how the mech driver would drop into the suit, and then there's a more organic version versus a mechanical version over here. More Escaflowne stuff. This is very cool, very steampunky. Interesting vibe. Shoot me a note if you're a big Escaflowne fan and if you recommend it. So I'm guessing we're still in Escaflowne. It's oh no, actually I think this is the other series. Yeah, so we transitioned at some point. Okay, so this is all in Japanese, so I'm not necessarily sure what series this is. If anybody knows, please send me a note. But I thought this was super cool. I mean, especially this design is very intimidating, and I love the back boosters here are awesome. And there's also like this development cell down here and a lot of great shots. I'm really curious as to what this is. I'll have to do some digging and maybe follow up with y'all afterwards. This was cool too. I was really inspired looking through this earlier with this spacesuit. There's like a series of like cosmonaut type figures out there too that kind of reminded me of this. I like looking at either this is a pistol or some kind of like accessory pack. And then you have some other mech designs down here. And this looks like work in progress with this. As another note too, I probably should have put this at the top, and I'll be sure to do the second one. If you guys happen to catch me at any shows, I've been bringing these books with me, so especially if we have a build table. So if you guys are planning on doing anything on the East Coast, seeing me, plan to see me, and you know, I'll bring this out, and you're certainly welcome to flip through it. So this is called Argent Souma. Admittedly, I'd not seen this either. This is a really interesting triangular mechanical design, almost Macross-esque in my mind. This is great. I like these aircraft too. This is very Macross reminiscent to me. And more cockpit designs, you know, there was a big thing last week, of course, with Sid Mead's death, and a lot of these designs are really harkened back to when you're digging through the Sid Mead book, and a Sid Mead book is one that I have on deck. I wanted to come out of the gates with this designer first before I brought out the Sid Mead. This was cool too. Some more aircraft. This is reminiscent of the MiG-25 Foxbat. I really like this asymmetrical design right here. This is very cool. This also too is very Macross to me, like a YF-21, kind of an AWACS design here too, built on an Antop platform. Lots of great mechanical designs. I'm gonna have to definitely look up this Argent Souma series, other stuff. So we're on to the big stuff, which is the Gundam. So I posted this picture on Instagram when I first got this book, and I got a ton of likes back on this. So yeah, the EZ8 looks phenomenal in its original form, and this is where it was birthed from. This is where it came from. And then G Gundam, I was super excited to find out that this guy did G Gundam. I love wacky Gundam stuff. I thought this was cool. This was very reminiscent of White Base and its original design, but just in a tank form. So that's kind of cool. I know Seed has a lot of good designs, just in terms of a story wise. I won't go off on too much of a tangent here. So I saw this. I'm not really sure what this is too. MS Igloo. I'm guessing this is probably one of those side stories, or maybe something that was translated into a manga, or maybe this was a series that never came to be. But I'll do some digging on this for y'all, and please shoot me a note in the comments if you're familiar with what MS Igloo is. These are great though. Everything's very like colony oriented. It's cool to see the Zegok here, kind of in this booster. This is this type of stuff that really gets me motivated, right? Because I don't know if anybody's ever scratch built or built something like this, but stuff like this really turns and gives me ideas. So worth the price of admission for a book like this, if I can kind of translate maybe someday this into an actual build. I thought this was neat, the UC Hardgraph series. So I'm guessing this is kind of like based on, you know, there's a couple of kits out there. Yeah, the Rambo command set. So this is the sketches that the designer provided, perhaps to Bandai, and same thing too with the arm. I don't know if this is out in a model set, but I know that this is, and I've seen folks like Taz build this and do a great job with it. We're almost at the end here. I hope you guys are finding this entertaining. Got the Bloodhound. These sketches are great. I love this underside piece here. One editorial note: when we were at IPMS Nova, one of these actually was considered for Best in Show and won a bunch of awards. It was placed in, I think, the diorama category, or there was like an other than sci-fi, or maybe it was like a what if scenario, and the judges loved it. They ate this kit up when it dropped. And the tanks are great. You see a lot of these out there. I know Brandon from Mecha Genre is building a smaller one of these right now. And then cool, so we're getting into the mobile suit. So this is great to kind of see where this started and then eventually went to. And it's cool to see, you know, how they have the knee hinged here, and then also the parachute pack, how that connects. And then this design right here, I thought was so keen. It's so clever, like how they put all this extra time into kind of building, you know, little extra pieces of the world that maybe will be on screen for 2 to 3 seconds. This is great too. This is reminiscent of me to that series where I forgot, it's a not Blue Destiny, maybe that's the one where the cannons are in the chest versus the head. And then I loved seeing, I've always known that, you know, you would have this view pod like on a Age 64 Apache, but kind of seeing how this design was incorporated into EZ8. And I think that's another thing, like as I've talked about, you know, the how and why and the realism and the time spent on mechanical design, people really attach to EZ8 because there is this kind of like real world crunch, right? It looks like a tractor, you know, it has this gun pod that can rotate on there. So, you know, it's all, or not all, but mostly thanks to this mechanical designer and its collaboration. Some other great stuff. This Cutaway is awesome. I loved Cutaways. Growing up as a kid, looking at car magazines and Haynes manuals, I always really enjoyed seeing Cutaways where they would show internal cross-section, so it's awesome to be able to see this with Gundam here in this book form. It's cool to see the hover tank with its acoustic antenna, and then the Gatling gun, to see these types of Gatling guns. I love how these are expressed and drawn out. I've got some other designers that do a really good job with this that I'll tease out. Got the sniper rifle too. That's a big famous right there. These air tanks are super cool too. Illustration gallery. I'm still looking for that one piece I wanted to highlight for y'all. Oh, I think we're gonna get to it. So this is another series. I looked in this really quickly called Tideline Blue. It looked really neat. I really dig how you have this mechanical cross section of the submarine, and you can see where the magazines are for the torpedoes and the air launch missiles. And then I thought it was really clever how they had these exit ports. So it's exiting from the left of the submarine. I don't know if that was, I'm curious if there's like a larger mechanical design reason for that, or if it's just because it looks cool. But I thought that was a really interesting way to be able to store and deploy vehicles versus having them all in a line and coming out the front. This is really neat too, this Looper and then Han class submarine. I briefly looked at this anime series. I think it's an early 2000s deal, and maybe heavy on the early CGI, but I might give it another look at some other point. I really like this carrier design too that incorporates all three types. So most carriers, you'll either have a straight deck, or you'll have this side deck for landings and launching, or you'll have this jump for short vertical takeoff aircraft. And this carrier incorporates all three. Very clever design. And coming into King Gainer, another series that the designer did. I'm not familiar with that either. These are cool. I really like these bipedal mechs, and then some more crunchy designs. It's really cool to see this medical kit down here too, and then just a storage container. Again, great world building. And King Gainer, some more stuff. Ergo Proxy, not familiar with what that is. Need to give that a look too. Aircraft was great. I really, these mechanical designs throughout are fantastic, and it's very distinct with the designer, where their style comes out here. Small vehicle, Ergo Proxy, and got these smaller mech suits. It looks like they're about human size, kind of like Votoms. Thought it was neat here too, with the wire and the little rocket coming off the wrist. And Cluster Edge, gun design. This is awesome. More aircraft. We're almost here at the very end. Car and motorcycle design, these weapon designs. This is fantastic. Got these other mechanical designs here that I thought, this is called Starship Operators. I didn't look into this. This looks neat. I'm curious if it's derivative of Starship Troopers or just something else. Gatchaman, great series. I love this as a kid. I always thought this was super cool. And then Kashan. Kashan's another great OG anime, and when I saw that he designed this, I was like, of course. I always thought it was really keen when the dog transformed into the bird plane in Kashan, and you also had the robotic geese, and then these were the big bads. Some game design here. These I thought were very kaiju in looks. I'm curious where this came from, and I'm gonna try to unpack that a little bit more later on. Okay, so before I close it out, I wanted to come back to a piece that I thought was super cool. One of my favorite pieces from the book. We danced through this, but I really liked this design right here, and I want to try to replicate this someday. So what you can see, it looks like this giant mech is holding some kind of booster, but it's asymmetrical. So I was thinking of doing something like a water type, where I take something that looks like a underwater tank, and then incorporating that with some type of underwater Zaku type build. So this was a really, really cool piece, and I'm gonna flag this when I hang up the build, but I wanted to come back to that before I close it out. So for the last part of the book, it closes out with an interview, and of course I cannot read this, which is a shame. I'm gonna try to look up later and see if this is translated anywhere, and if it is, I'll be sure to include it in the links. And that is it. So I hope you enjoyed the Kimitoshi Yamane Mecha Zukan tour. I had a lot of fun flipping through this, and I hope that you are kind of inspired to perhaps look into who has designed some of your favorite mech designs, who has designed some of your favorite animes, and see what the DNA is. And I think exploring that and incorporating it into your work and just your understanding of how things interact, especially if you're big into building mecha like I am, and or any of these mechanical things, can pay a ton of dividends. And on your way out, be sure to check the description for some links for that I mentioned in here. And if you guys have any questions, hit me up. And of course, whatever you guys are getting after, be sure you make it macho.